Hello there and welcome to World News Program, streaming to you live on All 24 News. I'm your host, Greenford Zachary, and up next are the top stories. 14 Palestinians were killed in a Zionist raid on Khan Yunis amid a new wave of forced displacement, and the death toll of journalists since October 7th soars. After 3 years of negotiations, the first international cybercrime agreement has been adopted thanks to Algerian leadership. Also in our news, in Sudan, violent shelling in El Fasher has left dozens dead and wounded. The government is sending a delegation into Jeddah, Saudi Arabia to start consultations on the Geneva negotiations. And later on, you'll be watching in our news, Algerian boxer Iman Khalif makes history as Algeria's first women's boxing gold at Roland Garros. The details right after the break. Hello again and welcome to the details. First off in our news file, at least 14 Palestinians were killed and others injured on Friday in Zionist airstrikes on Khan Yunis, Gaza. Palestinian media reported the victims were brought to Nasser Medical Complex as Zionist attacks continued across the city. Strikes targeted various areas and a Palestinian was also shot by Zionist snipers near El Ailabun school in El Karara. Two Palestinian journalists were killed in a separate Zionist airstrike on Khan Yunis, Gaza on Friday, along with several of their family members. The journalists Tamim Muammar of Palestine TV and Abdullah Susi of Al-Aqsa TV were among the victims. The Gaza government media office reported that their deaths bring the total number of journalists killed since October 7th to 165. Palestinian families fled Khan Yunis under threat from Zionist forces who resumed their invasion with heavy artillery and airstrikes. With no safe areas to go, they evacuated the eastern parts of the city following new orders ahead of an unexpected military operation. Here's Zahra Farjani with more.
Once again, displaced Palestinians in Khan Yunis are ordered by the Zionist forces to evacuate their homes in eastern neighborhoods and move westward. This evacuation journey, marked by constant turmoil, leads to an uncertain future, as none of the displaced individuals know where they will ultimately end up.
They dropped leaflets ordering us to evacuate. We were sitting in our homes, in a tent, when they demolished it and demanded that we leave. Now, we are living on the orders of the Zionists. We don't know where we're going, and we have sick and disabled people with us. Where can we go?
The Zionist occupation issued the evacuation order just hours before its troops launched a new assault on Khan Yunis, leaving families to spend the night on the roadsides with no safe place to go.
We suffered for approximately 5 hours being displaced from Abasan al-Kabir to Khan Yunis and here. Thank God, where are we supposed to live? We are living on the streets. There is nowhere available nor safe other than the street. We hope that all the countries of the world stand with us and protect us from the Zionist occupation and provide us with safety and security, and that we return to our homes and settle instead of this disgrace and living on the streets.
For its part, the UN is urging the Zionist entity to assume their responsibilities under international humanitarian law, including the obligation to consistently protect civilians and civilian infrastructure.
Once again, we call for all parties to the conflict to respect their obligations under international humanitarian law, including by taking constant care to spare civilians and civilian objects. This includes allowing civilians to leave for safer areas and allowing their return as soon as circumstances allow. People must be able to receive humanitarian assistance, whether they move or stay.
Reaching a safe destination in Gaza has become impossible as Zionist aggression escalates, with airstrikes hitting every part of the territory. This calculated and systematic policy, aimed at exterminating the Palestinian population, is met with silence from the international community.
And amid this silence, 8 Palestinians were killed and others injured early Friday in Zionist airstrikes targeting the Nusayrat, Maghazi and Jabalia refugee camps, as well as the cities of Khan Yunis and Rafah in southern Gaza. 3 were killed in a strike on a home in Nusayrat, 2 in Maghazi and 3 in Jabalia. Additional casualties occurred when an airstrike hit a displaced persons tent in Abasan al-Kabira, east of Khan Yunis.
We were sleeping. By around 1:10 a.m. we were startled by an explosion. I didn't know which house was targeted. For the past 24 hours, I've kept the windows open and haven't closed them. We were caught off guard by this explosion. What happened is shocking. We lost 4 people, our neighbors. What I can say, as you can see, we are witnessing it with our own eyes. They were civilians and none of them were targeted individuals. No, they were just civilians.
To international reactions now, the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor condemned occupying Israel's intensified targeting of Gaza schools used as shelters, calling it a systematic policy for forced displacement. Attacks on 9 schools have killed at least 79 Palestinians and injured 143, mostly children and women, with more victims still trapped under the rubble due to Zionist siege.
Although the Israeli army repeatedly attempts to justify the bombings by claiming that they target military or political figures without providing evidence to support these claims, the bombing and destruction of schools above the heads of displaced people inside them has no valid justification and serves no military purposes. By continuing to bomb the entire Gaza Strip and concentrating on shelters, such as those housed in UNRWA schools, the Israeli bombing strategy clearly indicates a policy intended to deprive Palestinians of security and stability, if only temporarily.
Still with reactions, UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini stated that 2/3 of Gaza's buildings have been damaged or destroyed, describing it as the destruction of an entire community. He stressed that this devastation is breaking down Palestinian society. UN High Commissioner Volker Turk condemned the so-called Zionist Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich's remarks about solving Gaza, calling them incitement to hatred and a war crime. He urged an investigation, warning that such statements could lead to further grave crimes.
The High Commissioner is shocked and appalled by the words of Minister Smotrich, according to whom letting 2 million Palestinians in Gaza starve to death could be justified and moral in order to free hostages.
And U.S. Special Reporter on Adequate Housing, Black Irishman Rajak Paul, expressed strong belief that a day of accountability for occupation will come. He emphasized that the need for actions like economic sanctions or trade bans against the Zionist entity, particularly through UN General Assembly resolutions, bypassing the U.S. veto in the Security Council.
I've been publicly advocating that a similar move should be made with regard to Israel. Why not unseat it? It seems very hostile to every ideal of the UN Charter, and it seems to literally kill UN staff wherever it wants. And it even declared UNRWA as a terrorist organization. It's obvious that they don't want to be part of the UN, so let's unseat the regime. Not expel Israel, but unseat, which doesn't require, under the UN Charter, an approval from the Security Council. General Assembly can do it.
To the resistance now, Abu Ubaidah of Hamas's Izzuddin al-Qassam brigades endorsed Yahya Sinwar as the new head of Hamas Political Bureau, succeeding Ismail Haniyeh. He confirmed the brigade's readiness to follow Sinwar's decisions and praised the appointment as a sign of the movement's strength and unity. To other international efforts to cease the fire, Qatar, Egypt and the United States called for resumption of ceasefire talks for Gaza in a joint statement on Thursday. The leaders emphasized the need for immediate negotiations to end the ongoing suffering in Gaza and suggested holding talks in Doha or Cairo on the 15th of this month.
It is time to bring immediate relief both to the long suffering of the people of Gaza and the long suffering of the hostages and their families. It is time to conclude a ceasefire. The three of us and our teams have worked relentlessly over many months to forge a framework agreement that is now on the table, with only the details of implementation left to conclude.
The statement added that it is time to finalize a ceasefire agreement and secure the release of prisoners and detainees.
As mediators, we are prepared, if necessary, to present a final bridging proposal that resolves the remaining implementation issues in a manner that meets the expectations of all parties.
Hamas representative in Algeria, Osama Hamdan, stated that the movement has shown responsibility and flexibility to ensure successful negotiations. However, he accused the Zionist entity of continuing to delay and escalate tensions in the region.
The
ongoing U.S. military, political and financial support is what encourages Netanyahu to continue evading the agreement that was welcomed by the movement in several occasions. The U.S. administration must face the crisis made by Netanyahu with regards to this agreement by using the power cards that it possesses instead of talking with the language of both sides, which implies that Hamas movement bears a part of responsibility for the failure to reach an agreement. The movement acted responsibly and seriously, and with sufficient flexibility that could have paved the way for the establishment of an agreement some months ago. But Netanyahu continues to drag the region into more tension and more wars, which will go beyond the borders of Palestine. Nobody can expect the end of this scenario or control its size.
And finally, in this file, early Friday, occupation forces conducted a major raid and arrest in Tulkarem and Faroon with heavy air patrols. Troops surrounded a house near Al-Isra Hospital, arresting Marwan Abdurrahman, and raided the Al-Fateh building, searching Palestinian homes. To other topical news now, Reuters reported a senior U.S. official stating that the joint statement from leaders is not linked to the broader regional situation. If it impacts Iran, it would be positive. The official warned that any Iranian escalation could undermine ceasefire talks by shifting focus, and that the consequences of an Iranian attack would be significant, including for the Iranian economy. The International Committee, chaired by Algerian Ambassador Fawzi Boubacar, adopted the UN Cybercrime Convention after 3 years of negotiations. Algeria, leading the committee since 2021, held 8 sessions and extensive consultations. The convention was adopted unanimously, and member states praised Algeria's professional and neutral leadership in the complex process.
I consider that the 2 first documents are approved, and the document AC 291-271 will be attached to the report of this session. You understand the emotions. We spent 3 years working effortlessly under big pressure. It was hard. Thank you very much.
Still with Algeria-related news, but this time economically, Sonatrach, Algeria's energy group, has announced the revival of its operations in Niger with the Kafra project. This decision is part of a broader effort to bolster its collaboration with Niger's Saudi DAB and expedite the implementation of joint initiatives such as the Trans-Saharan Gas Pipeline. The project is set to improve regional energy security and create new investment prospects.
The Kafra project, initiated by the Sonatrach Group in 2015, is a significant endeavor in Niger. We have now entered a critical stage, focusing on exploration development. A work schedule has been agreed upon between the Sonatrach Group and SONIDAP to create a well-planned program. This program aims to accurately assess the reserves in the Kafra area, located 80 kilometers from the Algerian border, and to identify additional quantities for the eventual production of the region's wells.
The Algerian National Economic, Social and Environmental Council's latest report highlights strong performance and growth in Algeria for 2023, despite the global tensions. This success is credited to effective government measures supporting economic and social development.
Algeria's external situation remained resilient with a persistent trade surplus amidst a volatile geopolitical global context. In 2023, the country demonstrated a steadfast commitment to economic, social and environmental development despite ongoing challenges. The measures taken showed the authorities' determination to sustain long-term growth and improve citizens' living conditions, with clear efforts and tangible progress. Demographic development is both an opportunity and a challenge, offering significant potential for economic and social growth through the effective use of active age groups, especially women and youth. Our report shows substantial improvement in living conditions and well-being due to a remarkable reduction in multidimensional poverty. These efforts have positioned Algeria among high human development countries, as highlighted by UNDP reports, showcasing its prominence in the Maghreb region.
And in regional news, Tunisian President Kais Saied called for a comprehensive approach to tackle irregular migration and its root causes. He assured humane treatment of African nationals while preventing illegal presence in Tunisia. Saied also reaffirmed Tunisia's commitment to enhancing cooperation with African countries. At least 10 people were killed and others injured in heavy shelling by rapid support forces on Al Fashir, north of Darfur. The attack targeted the livestock market, Radif and Tawbra neighborhoods, and the Saudi hospital. The Darfur governor called it a horrific crime. The city has faced intense shelling for months, causing numerous casualties and displacing thousands. Still with the same file, the Sudanese government will send a delegation to Jeddah to consult with the U.S. on a ceasefire talks in Geneva, led by Minister Mohammed Bashir Abdullah. The mission aims to advance peace and alleviate war-related suffering. The U.S. has invited both the Sudanese military and rapid support forces to the talks hosted by Saudi Arabia and Switzerland. The UN World Food Programme warned of severe drought in southern Africa due to El Niño, posing a serious threat to public health. Valerie Garnieri, the World Food Programme's Assistant Executive Director, announced financial aid for over 25 million people affected by El Niño, including millions of children suffering from stunting and malnutrition.
27 million people that are affected by the El Nino-induced drought across the region. And at the World Food Program, we are targeting 5.9 million of those with the relief assistance that we are providing. And across these countries, 21 million children are stunted, and we are seeing 3.5 million children who are struggling with acute malnutrition and who require nutrition treatment. So these numbers aren't a start.
Moving on now to other developments in Europe, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer urged security services to stay on high alert over the weekend due to potential violence, stressing the need to ensure community safety as a top priority. Here's Hossan Burkan with the report now.
Heightened security measures are in place across the UK as authorities brace for more unrest. The government has deployed specialized police units to key areas to contain potential violence. The protests erupted after a 17-year-old British national fatally stabbed 3 young girls at a Southport event on July 29th. False Report Online identified him as an Islamist migrant, igniting anti-immigration protests that have spread to over 20 locations, including London and Manchester. Rioters have attacked migrant communities, mosques, and asylum seeker housing. In response, pro-immigration protesters have taken to the streets to support migrants and counter far-right narratives. They emphasize the need to fight misinformation and promote understanding.
It's a good sign. I don't want to say that, yay, we've done it with one, because I think this is just the beginning to making sure that we educate people and look after communities and fight back against the misinformation of what they're spreading, not just on the streets, but in communities and stuff like that. But it's a good sign, I think,
These people aren't here out of choice. They've obviously come here because wherever they come from, it's a struggle. So this is not the answer for these people to come here and show violence and smash window and make them feel, their lives are a threat. So they've already come from that background, where their lives were felt at threat. So why are we doing it here to them now? So just supporting that, really.
The government under Prime Minister Keir Starmer has vowed to take strong action against those involved in the riots, promising to use the full force of the law. Nearly 600 additional prison spaces have been made available, and authorities are cracking down on the spread of false information online, with tech companies being urged to take greater responsibilities. As the nation remains on edge, the government's extensive police response is crucial in preventing further violence and restoring order. This situation underscores the urgent need for dialogue and understanding to address the deepening division surrounding immigration and far-right extremism in the UK.
And elsewhere in Europe, Russian President Vladimir Putin called the Ukrainian attack on the Kursk border region a major provocation against Moscow. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that it is still repelling Ukrainian attempts to advance into the Kursk region for the 4th consecutive day. More on this story with Marwa Belaywer now.
Russian reinforcements. Russia announced on Friday that intense fighting continues for the 4th day running in its Kursk region, which borders Ukraine, as its armed forces battle to repel an unprecedented Ukrainian offensive, inflicting heavy losses both in personnel and equipment.
During the fighting on the Kursk front, the enemy lost up to 945 soldiers and over 100 armored vehicles, including 12 tanks, 17 armored personnel carriers, 6 infantry fighting vehicles, 67 armored combat vehicles, 2 self-propelled flamethrowers of the Buk M1 model, and 3 field guns.
Ukrainian forces broke across the border on Tuesday in a thrust that caught the Russian military by surprise after months of gradual advances in eastern Ukraine by Moscow's forces. President Vladimir Putin described the attack as a large-scale provocation during a Security Council meeting on Friday. The Russian Emergency Ministry has declared a federal state of emergency in the region and evacuated thousands of residents.
The situation in Sutsa is very bad. We called a taxi from Belisa and left the Kursk region through Oboyan, but we did not even dare to go through Sutsa. The rest of the trip went smoothly.
Ukraine's assault on Kursk was not followed by any official statement regarding the military incursion. Experts suggest Kiev's move may target Russian infrastructure, divert attention from Donbass, and even disrupt supply routes. Other analysts suggest Ukraine might use captured territory to negotiate an exchange of the Kursk nuclear plant for Zaporizhzhia or strengthen its position in future peace talks with Russia.
All the way to the United States now, the Palestinian issue and Middle East tensions are key for both Trump and Harris, but political responses remain unchanged, with continued and conditional support for the Zionist entity, despite rising support for Palestinians amid the Gaza genocide. More details with Nabil Khazini.
Following the outbreak of the occupation war on the Gaza Strip, Cori Bush, a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, was one of the first to speak out early on against their policy of genocide, saying that the occupation was committing ethnic cleansing in Gaza. But on Tuesday, Cori Bush lost her House seat in the Democratic primary in St. Louis, Missouri, to Wesley Bell, who was backed by a large pro-Israeli group. The pro-Israeli lobbying group AIPAC celebrated its role in ensuring that Cori Bush failed to win the election in the Democratic state. The move was prompted by alarm and raised questions about the impact of AIPAC in the U.S. policy.
AIPAC had to spend $8.5 million to get 51% of the vote to defeat Cori Bush. Billionaires buying election is not what this country is supposed to be about. We have to end Citizens United and super PACs and move to public funding of elections.
This is the pro-Zionist lobby's second win of the season. The first was the June defeat of progressive Congressman Jamal Bowman, who was a forceful critique of the occupation's attack on Gaza. Reports suggest that AIPAC threw $17 million into the race, turning Bowman's primary into the most expensive one in U.S. history. Critics have long decried the role of unlimited outside spending in U.S. politics, saying it allows certain interest groups to exert outsized influence over campaigns. And with the U.S. presidential election approaching, the role and the impact of such organizations on the poll's final results remain under the spotlight.
And past the remarks of President Joe Biden's remarks, or that he expressed concerns about a peaceful transfer of power, on Thursday, Donald Trump affirmed that there would be a peaceful transfer of power following the U.S. presidential vote, but he immediately cast doubt on the integrity of the elections. He stated, quote, "There will be a peaceful transfer as there was last time, despite the 2021 Capitol riot by his supporters," and added, quote, "I just hope we have honest elections." And to discuss this development further, we are joined live from the USA by Dr. Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean Professor of International Education at California University. Thank you, sir, for agreeing to be with us.
Thank you, Karim.
So, Dr. Hamoud Salhi, what were your first thoughts on hearing this? Is it reasonable for President Joe Biden to express concerns about a peaceful transfer of power, given Donald Trump's rhetoric?
Yeah, and it's a serious issue for the American elections. As an example, we had a 2020 election results almost 4 years later, and the current administration has refused to accept them. The current presidential Republican candidate has refused to accept them. It's a possibility, and I think it's a serious concern. It's also where you get among the people who are not supportive of Donald Trump.
So what impact do public sentiments and rhetoric from political leaders have on the perception, let's say, of election legitimacy and the potential for civil unrest?
They are huge. It's part of building that image in the public eye. The trick is to appear as you are one of them. Bush was known, for example, to be someone you could have in the American tradition, a beer at the end of the day. Reagan was a cowboy that you could be and compare him to John Wayne, another American actor. And then you have another one, Jimmy Carter, who was known for his modesty. He was working very, very hard. He's the most sort of hard-working in American presidential, he was not liked. They thought of him as someone who is not presidential. So the persona, the public, is very, very important, particularly these days with the social media. The challenge is to translate that persona into political action in terms of voting and so on and so forth.
And given the political scene in the U.S., Dr. Hamoud Salhi, we see that probably former President Donald Trump and the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris are probably neck to neck here in opinion polls. But then do you see a solid shot for Donald Trump to make it again in the office?
It's really very hard because remember, he lost by 7 million popular vote. This doesn't mean that Donald Trump is not a legitimate candidate, despite his trouble, despite his problem. This is an election, and it's hard to say it, but it appears to me it's an election for the Democrats to lose. In other words, the supporters of Trump have not changed, still that same core of people. The Democrats have challenges or issues that they could rally the mass, the young, the women, and so on and so forth. So there is a possibility for them to do well in this election. The challenge for them, for the Democrat, is to get the young people to go and vote. And if we have a large turnout, as we have seen in 2020, the Democrats have a chance. But if it is a low turnout, then Donald Trump has. Much of what we've seen these days is really a reaction of the Democrat having Harris, who brings energy, all of that. This will continue for the next week or so, particularly in 10 days when we have the Democrat convention. So they have some few days after that to be sort of energetic, appearing to be gaining ground on Trump. But in the end, when things settled, then that's where things could sort of either change for the Democrat or against them. But Karim, in my perception, this election, the Democrats have to win it based on the total numbers that they won in the previous, but the difference in popular vote in the past, and the inability or the appearance that Donald Trump is not gaining more supporters.
Dr. Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean Professor of California University, thank you so much for being with us. Moving on to other topical news now in a news in brief with Sofian Kinturi and Yassine Irkitri.
Turkey's foreign minister announced that Somalia and Ethiopian foreign ministers will meet in Ankara next week to resolve a dispute over Ethiopia's port deal with Somaliland. Turkey is mediating talks following tensions that arose when Ethiopia leased Somaliland coastline for recognition, which Somalia disputes.
On the 9th day of economic hardship protests in Nigeria, demonstrators marched to honor those who died in clashes with police. Since August 1st, protesters have been calling for relief from economic struggles and insecurity. The turmoil, which has turned deadly in 6 northern states, has resulted in 22 fatalities, according to Amnesty International.
A plane carrying 62 people crashed northeast of Sao Paulo, killing everyone on board. Local official reported President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, speaking at an event in Santa Catarina, called for a minute of silence, acknowledging that all passengers are presumed dead.
Heavy rains and flooding in northern Yemen killed at least 45 lives and caused injuries to many others, according to local health officials and the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The floods have severed access to several valleys, isolating communities and impeding rescue efforts.
Moving on to other news stories, that is sports news. On Friday, Algerian boxer Iman Khalif concluded a stellar series of fights at Roland Garros and claimed the women's welterweight boxing and gold medal after defeating China's Yang Liu 5-0. Enthusiastic crowds chanted her name, waved Algerian flags, and cheered with each punch she landed. Iman Khalif has been exposed to a ferocious series of media misleading information about her true identity after defeating her Italian opponent in a record time of 46 seconds. Her gold medal is Algeria's first in women's boxing and only the second boxing gold for Algeria, following Hussein Sultani's win in 1996.
Mr. President is the #1 supporter. In 2022, he encouraged me, saying, Iman, there is Paris Olympics. Make us proud. Tell me what you need and we will provide it. Thank God I kept my promise and won the gold medal. It wasn't easy, but it's a medal of honor for all Arabs. I'm proud to have made the Arab world and all Muslims proud. Thank God. The people of Algeria deserve this medal. They deserve to celebrate. Everyone in Algeria knows me and my performance. I'm overwhelmed with joy. Today we heard the national anthem here, and I send my thanks to everyone who supported me. This is my dream come true. Thank you.
And Iman Khalif's coach, Mohamed Jawa, also had a statement to say after her win.
We could
make the Algerian people happy. Our dream became true. But before that, there were consecutive nightmares that we could overcome. And this is what makes the Algerian people proud and raise the Algerian flag higher. Thank God we reached our goal, which was a very hard journey, with the help of all the technical assistants and the team who worked with Iman Khalif. I can't find my words here. We are happy. All Algerians, she's your daughter. You defended her when she was bullied. So take the streets and celebrate this victory.
1, 2, 3, viva l'Algérie.
And as the Algerian champion Iman Khalif clinched the gold medal in women's boxing final, President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune congratulated Khalif for her title. On a post on X platform, President Abdelmajid Tebboune proudly hailed her achievement and described it a triumph for the nation as a whole. And joining me live from New Zealand is Sue Glacey, IFMA Vice President, former world champion. Hello, ma'am, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, what are your initial thoughts after this win, and how should the sports community address and support athletes facing scrutiny and abuse related to gender identity to ensure, let's say, a fair and respectful competition?
Well, watching the final, it looked fair to me. It didn't look like any huge discrepancy in there. So I think when we look at gender differences, we need to be inclusive and we need to stop discrimination about this.
And technically we have seen public figures and who they should actually play a certain positive role. But according to you, what role should these public figures and media play in either supporting or challenging athletes' eligibility based on gender identity? And how can they, let's say, contribute to a more inclusive sports environment?
I think to start with, if people are so watched around the world, they need to be a lot more informed on what they're discussing. There were a lot of comments from highly valued people around the world, and they were discussing issues that they shouldn't be discussing because they don't have the knowledge or the background to be able to comment the way they did. I think that they need to be looking to be more inclusive and understanding of what these athletes have to face and what the real depth of it is.
And can you imagine the amount of pressure that Iman Khalif went through? I mean, in such a very important and significant, let's say, competition for her, and receiving all this pressure and this hatred and discrimination, even from public figures, very known public figures, even former President Donald Trump and the multi-billionaire Elon Musk, who tweeted about it as well.
I think that there are going to be people around the world that will be quick to judge and come from a place of ignorance, whether it's willful or whether it is just through natural ignorance. They should not be commenting on something that they have no knowledge in. the cause, like the damage it will cause these athletes is huge. Going to the Olympics, fighting for a gold medal, getting to that point has huge stresses without having to face this kind of discrimination in the press.
And how would you describe this historic win for Iman Khalif after going through all this hardship?
I was really excited to watch it. She held her cool through the whole fight. It was a brilliant display of athleticism and boxing from both athletes. It was brilliant to watch, and she can certainly hold her head up high because that was fantastic boxing.
Thank you so much, Sue Glacy, IFMA Vice President and former world champion, for all these comments and insights. Moving on to other important stories now. On Friday, Algerian runner Jamal Sajjati qualified for the 800-meter final at the Paris 2024 Olympics. Sajjati earned his spot in the final by leading the semi-final race with a time record, outperforming all competitors in his group. After qualifying, Algerian runner Jamal Sajjati expressed his pride in reaching the Olympic final and affirmed his determination to win Algeria's second gold medal at the global sports event.
Thank God. All of this thanks to God and the prayers of my parents. I'm grateful to my coach and Olympic champion Benaida Marah for their support. I hope with all my heart to hear the national anthem on the podium. The final race will not be easy, but I'm determined to be mentally prepared and make the Algerian people proud by raising our flag.
Majid Tebboune congratulated Jamal Sajjati on reaching the 800-meter final at the Paris Olympics. In a post on X, President Majid Tebboune told Sajjati, "You are on the path to gold and will reach it, God willing." And in a statement to Algerian international news channel, All 24 News, Olympic champion Kylian Amour expressed pride in the encouraging words she received from Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune, calling it an honor and a great motivation.
Yes, I received a phone call from the President of the Algerian Republic. I was in my room at the Olympic Village. The advisor to the President put me through to the President, who thanked me and said that I'm the pride of Algeria. He also invited me to come to Algeria, and I'm very eager for that. Receiving congratulations from the President is an honor for me, and I can only be proud of that, as it is an additional motivation.
Être honoré et avoir cette motivation en plus.
And finally, in our news, Miriam Zian takes us in a tour in Paris suburbs where residents there expressed mixed feelings about the atmosphere of the Paris Olympics 2024. Let's follow.
It's the second week of the Olympic Games, and Parisians are adjusting to the event. But residents of Saint-Denis, a suburb home to the Olympics, had mixed feelings about the Games. Many were conflicted, enjoying the event's atmosphere, but disappointed by not being as involved in the celebrations as they had anticipated.
We live in La Plaine. I work in Saint-Denis, partly for a social landlord, and I would have liked it better if they had told us, well, we have tickets, we can give you some.
Anda Fofana, high school student, also expressed disappointment that after enduring 4 years of nearby construction, she did not receive a free ticket to any events as she had hoped.
I was expecting to get tickets, especially for gymnastics, since I really like it. What I felt was that we were a bit forgotten and that we didn't get anything in exchange for the trouble of living next to the Olympic Village.
Though most appreciate the festivities the event has brought to the city center, many said this did not outweigh the inconveniences.
We've known for several years that the Games were going to take place in 2024 here, so there was construction project which really disturbed all the residents. There was work 24/7, so you couldn't rest during the day, the evening at 2, 3, 4 a.m. Basically all night long, there was a lot of very noisy work that resonated everywhere.
While the heavy police presence is valued for extra safety, residents living on the edge of the Olympic Village must undergo numerous daily checks to enter and exit their apartments.
We feel safer than before the games, so we are more comfortable going out because there is police presence everywhere. So it is something we don't normally do, especially in the evening, so we can go out. There are a lot more people.
Overall, this summer, the Olympic Games have evoked mixed feelings among locals. Some chose to stay in the City of Light and live by the rhythm of the games, while others preferred to leave and take refuge elsewhere.
And with this, ladies and gentlemen, our news comes to a close. For more updates, you can always check our social media platforms. Thank you for watching. Until next time, do take care.